$60 million vanished into the Red Sea. That's roughly the cost of a U.S. fighter jet that took an unscheduled swim recently.
Yeah, quite a splash.
But the really surprising part of this, well, expensive dip, both crew members involved walked away.
Okay, let's unpack this because a $60 million machine unexpectedly ending up underwater, it just raises a lot of questions.
Absolutely. And that's what this deep dive is really about. We're going to focus on how this FA-18E Super Hornet was lost from the USS Harry S. Truman.
Okay.
Our aim is to, understand the sequence of events, think about the possible reasons why it happened, and then maybe connect this specific incident to the bigger picture.
Bigger picture stuff like naval aviation, aircraft readiness,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Exactly. The overall readiness of these complex aircraft.
And we're not just guessing here, right? We've looked at actual sources.
Right. We've got news reports detailing the event itself. There's also a really informative report from the Government Accountability Office, the GAO.
Ah, yes, the GAO. They watch government spending and effectiveness. That's them. Their report is on the challenges the Air Force and Navy face keeping their planes flying. And we've got some articles just giving background on, fighter jets, naval operations, context.
So the goal here is to give you, our listeners, a clear understanding of what happened and maybe more importantly, why it matters.
Precisely. Whether you follow global events closely, or you're just into military tech, or maybe just curious about a pretty unusual story.
Like a jet falling off a carrier.
Exactly. Understanding the complexities, the challenges of running and maintaining these advanced military aircraft is actually pretty relevant. We want to give you the key info without, drowning you in jargon.
Okay, sounds good. So let's get into the specifics, what actually occurred.
All right. The date was Monday, April 28th, 2025. Location, as you said, the Red Sea.
And the aircraft.
An FA-18E Super Hornet. And like you mentioned, these are not cheap. We're talking roughly $60 million.
60 million, wow. And the circumstances. It wasn't combat.
No, that's what's so striking. It wasn't combat, wasn't even flying. The jet was apparently being moved, towed out of a hangar bay on the USS Harry S. Truman.
Just moving it on deck.
Yeah, and somehow the tractor, the vehicle pulling it, lost control. Spun out, apparently.
And the result?
Both the jet and the tow tractor went straight overboard into the Red Sea.
Good grief. What about the people involved? You said they walked away.
That's the crucial part. The sailors who were towing the aircraft reacted incredibly quickly, managed to get clear.
Yeah.
We understand the sailor on the tow tractor got a minor injury, but survived. And the pilot also survived. Now, the report doesn't actually say if the pilot was even in the jet while it was being towed, which is interesting.
Good point. So what happens next? An investigation.
Oh, absolutely. The U.S. Navy launched one immediately. That's standard procedure. They need to figure out exactly what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how to stop it happening again.
Makes sense. But what about the carrier itself? Does losing a jet like this cripple it?
Well, that's an important point. The Navy was quick to state that the USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group, the whole group, remains fully mission capable.
Okay, so it's still operational.
Very much so. And remember, a carrier strike group is a massive amount of power.
Right, it's not just the carrier.
No, you've got the flagship carrier, the Truman. Then there's Carrier Air Wing 1, which has 9 squadrons of aircraft.
9 squadrons.
Yep. Plus Destroyer Squadron 28 with 3 guided missile destroyers. And the cruiser, USS Gettysburg. It's a major force projection tool.
And they're in the Red Sea for a reason, right? What's their mission there?
A critical one. The Truman's been stationed there for several months now. The main job is protecting commercial shipping lanes.
From the Houthi attacks.
Exactly. Threats from the Houthi rebel group in Yemen, who, backed by Iran. This strike group hasn't just been sitting there either. They've been involved in daily strikes in the region.
So a very high operational tempo.
Extremely high. And adding to that pressure, the Truman's deployment had already been extended once by the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth.
Which signals just how important their presence is considered.
Definitely. So this incident, this jet going overboard, happened right in the middle of all that intense activity.
Which naturally makes you wonder why it happened. What are the possible explanations?
Right. And we need to be really clear here. A lot of what circulated immediately after was based on initial reports and, frankly, some speculation.
Okay, so tread carefully. What were some of those initial ideas?
Well, one early report, apparently citing a U.S. official, suggested that Truman made a sudden, hard turn.
A hard turn. Why?
The suggestion was to evade incoming Houthi fire. This idea got picked up quickly. You saw it on places like Reddit.
And didn't the Houthis claim something around the same time?
They did. On the very same day, the Houthi group claimed they had launched a drone and missile attack targeting the carrier.
Okay, so that sounds plausible on the surface, maybe.
Hmm.
Carrier dodges attack, jet slides off.
Well, that hard turn idea actually faced a lot of skepticism online, especially on Reddit again.
Oh, why were people doubtful?
A few reasons. People were questioning the physics involved.
Mm.
Could a massive aircraft carrier really turn so sharply, so suddenly, that it would send a secured aircraft and a tow tractor flying off the deck?
Yeah, I can see questioning that. They're huge ships.
Exactly. Their inertia is immense. Plus, there were discussions about standard operating procedures. Would a carrier even need to maneuver that drastically to deal with the kinds of threats the Houthis typically use? It seemed unlikely to many.
So the physics and the tactics didn't quite add up for some observers.
Right. It felt off, like maybe too dramatic an explanation for what might have happened.
So if not a dramatic evasive turn, what else was being suggested? More towards the mundane?
Well, yes. There was speculation, and again, this is speculation about simple human error.
Like what?
Like, maybe the seaman operating the tow tractor didn't set the brakes properly, or something malfunctioned with the tractor itself. It's a reminder that even with all this high-tech gear, the human element is always, always critical.
And sometimes things just break. Or mistakes happen.
Precisely. Yeah. And it's also worth remembering this wasn't the only notable incident involving the Truman Group recently.
Oh, what else has happened?
Well, back in December, there was that really unfortunate friendly fire incident.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, 2 U.S. Navy pilots flying a Super Hornet that took off from the Truman were mistakenly shot down by the USS Gettysburg, the cruiser in the strike group.
Oh, wow. Were they okay?
Thankfully, yes.
Hmm?
Both pilots managed to eject safely, but still a terrible event.
Absolutely. Any others?
And then, just this past February, the Truman itself was involved in a collision.
A collision with what?
With a civilian merchant vessel in the
Oh.
Mediterranean. No injuries reported, luckily.
But still, a collision involving a carrier. That's serious.
It is. And the commanding officer of the Truman was actually relieved of duty afterwards.
Which highlights the accountability, the intense scrutiny these commands are under.
Exactly. So you take these previous incidents, add the loss of this multi-million-dollar jet, it really underscores the immense pressure cooker these carrier strike groups operate in.
Which leads us naturally to that broader question you mentioned earlier. How well are we maintaining these incredibly complex, incredibly expensive machines?
Yeah, let's zoom out a bit, because losing a $60 million jet, however it happened, really throws a spotlight on this whole issue of aircraft sustainment and readiness.
It's not just about the money, it's about having the planes ready when you need them.
Precisely. And this isn't just our opinion. We have that GAO report, remember?
Right, the Government Accountability Office. What did they find?
Well, their findings were pretty stark, actually. They found that despite billions, literally billions, being spent every year, both the Air Force and the Navy have been struggling for years to keep their aircraft properly maintained.
What are the main reasons for that struggle?
It's a mix of things, according to the GAO. The increasing age of the planes is a big factor.
Older planes need more work.
They do. Plus, there are shortages of necessary spare parts and just significant delays in getting maintenance done. Bottlenecks in the system.
And has this been getting better or worse?
According to the GAO report, readiness, that's the percentage of aircraft ready to go at any given time, has actually worsened since fiscal year 2015 for some key aircraft types they looked at.
Worsened? Despite all the spending, that's concerning.
It is. And here's something really specific the GAO pointed out. Neither the Air Force nor the Navy had fully completed something called sustainment reviews for many of their aircraft.
Sustainment reviews? What are those exactly?
They're basically deep dives into how well an aircraft's entire support system is performing maintenance, parts, training, everything. The idea is to find problems and figure out how to improve readiness over the long haul.
Okay, so they're important checks, and they weren't getting done.
Not completely, or not on time. And the timelines the GAO found back in October 2021 were, well, quite different. The Air Force was aiming to finish theirs by the end of fiscal year 2025.
Okay, that's relatively soon. What about the Navy?
The Navy's target at that time was much further out. Fiscal year 2035.
2035? That seems like a very long time away.
It does. And the GAO's point was that these delays mean both services might be missing crucial opportunities. Opportunities to spot maintenance problems, supply chain issues, other risks that could keep planes grounded when they're needed,
So not doing the homework, basically.
or at least not finishing it. And it gets worse.
Oh.
The GAO also found that even for the reviews they had done, neither service had finalized concrete plans to actually fix the problems identified.
Wait, so they find problems but don't have a solid plan to address them?
Apparently not finalized plans, no. Which, kind of defeats the purpose of the review in the first place.
You'd think. Has anyone noticed this lack of planning?
Oh, yeah. It caught the attention of Congress. They were considering actually requiring the Air Force and Navy to submit these mitigation plans.
Forcing their hand, essentially.
Kind of. The GAO's recommendations were pretty straightforward. Prioritize these reviews, get them done faster, and develop those action plans.
Makes sense. How did the military respond?
The Department of Defense generally agreed, but the Navy pushed back a bit on the timeline, citing limited resources.
The classic resource constraint argument.
Right. But the GAO emphasized the urgency. And you look at losing a $60 million jet, it does make you question if resources are being prioritized effectively, doesn't it?
It certainly puts it in perspective. So, okay, that's the broader context of maintenance struggles. Let's talk about the plane itself, the FA-18E Super Hornet. It's a key aircraft, right?
Absolutely vital for the Navy. It's their main multi-role attack and fighter jet, what they call a strike fighter.
Meaning it can hit ground targets and fight other planes.
Yeah. Exactly. Super versatile. It first flew back in 1995, became operational in 2001. For a long time, before the F-35 really came online in numbers on carriers, the Super Hornet was pretty much the most capable jet operating from U.S. Navy carriers, certainly in terms of firepower.
And the cost. We said $60 million, but I think I saw another figure.
Yeah, it's worth noting there's a slight difference. The news report said around $60 million. A more specific figure from fiscal year 2021 budgets puts the unit cost closer to $67.4 million.
Either way, a huge investment per plane.
Definitely. Gives you a sense of scale. It's often nicknamed the Rhino, by the way.
The Rhino, why is that?
Apparently because it's bigger, has more angular features compared to the older Hornet it replaced. It kind of looks Rhino-ish from some angles, I guess.
Huh. Okay. And it's not like they built these in 2001 and haven't touched them since, right? They get upgrades.
Oh, constantly. It's not a static design. Recent modernizations include integrating a new sensor system called IRST Block 2. That's infrared search and track. Very important. And they're always rolling out new software and hardware updates, what they call system configuration sets, or SCS, keeping it relevant.
So, despite the broader maintenance issues the GAO found, have there been any specific successes with keeping the Super Hornets ready?
Actually, yes. And this is important context, too. The Navy made a big push a few years ago and reported some significant improvements specifically for the Super Hornet and its electronic warfare sibling, the EA-18G Growler.
What kind of improvements?
They announced back in 2019 that they'd hit and maintained an over 80% mission-ready rate for those fleets.
Over 80%. That sounds pretty good.
It's a huge turnaround, because back in 2017, the readiness rates for Super Hornets were apparently below 50%.
Wow, from under 50% to over 80%. How did they manage that?
A lot of it was attributed to this initiative called the Naval Sustainment System A, or NSSA.
NSSA, what did that involve?
It was a series of reforms really focused on fixing those earlier maintenance problems. It's described as being very data-driven.
Using data to figure out the bottlenecks.
Exactly. Aiming to get more spare parts available, improve the plane's overall capability, and just speed up the maintenance process itself. And they claimed it also helped reduce the cost per plane for maintenance.
Okay, so that's encouraging. It shows that focused effort can make a difference, even with older platforms.
It does. So while the GAO highlights ongoing systemic challenges, there's also evidence of progress, at least for this specific, very important fleet.
Which brings us back to the jet currently at the bottom of the Red Sea. What happens now? Do they try to get it back?
The recovery question. That's always a big one when something like this happens. Typically, the U.S. military goes to, well, extraordinary lengths to recover downed aircraft.
Why? Is it just the cost?
Cost is part of it, sure. They might be able to salvage valuable parts, but often a bigger reason is technology security.
Preventing secrets from falling into the wrong hands.
Exactly. Especially with advanced aircraft. They really don't want potential adversaries getting their hands on sensitive technology.
Are there examples of this?
Oh, definitely. Remember that U.S. Navy F-35C stealth fighter that crashed into the South China Sea back in early 2022?
Vaguely, yeah.
It went down in really deep water, over 12,000 feet. But the Navy mounted a major operation with specialized recovery vessels.
To get it before China could.
That was widely seen as the primary motivation, yes. They successfully recovered it. Similarly, the British Royal Navy recovered their F-35B after it went off a carrier in the Mediterranean in 2021.
So recovery is the default, if possible. What if it's not possible? Like if it's in a really dangerous area?
Right. If recovery is deemed too risky or impossible, say, it's deep in hostile territory, then the alternative is often to destroy the wreckage,
Destroy it. How?
usually with targeted strikes, if possible. The goal is the same: prevent technology transfer. Think back to the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound.
Ah, the stealth helicopter.
Exactly. One of the Blackhawks was damaged on landing. The SEAL team destroyed it with explosives before they left, so the technology couldn't be examined.
Makes sense. Is there another option besides recovery or destruction?
Well, there's also the practice of cannibalizing parts. If an aircraft is damaged but maybe not completely lost, or if they recover wreckage, they might strip usable components to keep other planes flying.
Like using one broken car for parts to fix another?
Pretty much. There's actually an F-35A in the Air Force they call Frankenjet.
Frankenjet. Seriously?
Yep. It was apparently built using the front section of one crashed F-35 and the rear section of another. Fully operational now. It can be more cost-effective than buying a whole new plane.
Resourceful, I guess. So, for this FA-18E in the Red Sea, what's the plan? Recovery. Destruction. Leave it.
As of now, it's actually unclear. Our sources don't specify the depth where it went down or how close it might be to, say, Houthi-controlled areas or other potential threats that could complicate a recovery operation.
So, we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Looks like it. It's a situation that will likely become clearer in the coming days or weeks.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. What are the main takeaways here?
Well, first, the stark fact. A $60 million U.S. fighter jet was lost. Not in combat, but seemingly due to a towing mishap on an aircraft carrier.
Right, operating in a really critical high-pressure region, the Red Sea.
Exactly. And it's a potent reminder that even seemingly routine operations on a carrier deck carry inherent risks. Complex environment.
And thankfully, amidst all the talk of millions of dollars in hardware, the people involved were safe. That quick reaction from the sailors is really key.
Absolutely crucial, a human element. Beyond the incident itself, though, it really does connect back to those broader challenges.
The ones the GAO report highlighted, maintaining readiness for these complex, aging aircraft.
Yes. It underscores those concerns, even while we acknowledge the Navy has made recent strides improving the readiness of the Super Hornet fleet specifically with things like that NSSA program.
So it's a mixed picture, ongoing challenges, but also some focused successes.
That seems fair to say.
So thinking about all this, the cost, the weird circumstances of the loss, the backdrop of trying to keep these planes ready, what's the big question it leaves us with?
I think it makes you consider the inherent risks and sheer complexity of modern naval aviation, especially when you're operating at such a high tempo like the Truman is in the Red Sea in potentially dangerous waters.
Yeah.
What does this kind of incident, a non-combat loss, suggest about those pressures? And maybe more importantly, what lessons can the Navy learn from this specific event? How can they use this to prevent future losses and just ensure these incredibly valuable, expensive assets are deployed as effectively and safely as possible?
That's definitely something to think about. A crucial question for the Navy and for anyone interested in this stuff. We've really just scratched the surface here, haven't we?
We have. There's always more detail.
So for you listening, if this sparked your interest, you could definitely dig deeper. Maybe check out the full GAO report on aviation sustainment, see the details of those challenges for yourself.
Or you could research the specific mission and the operational tempo of the USS Harry S. Truman in the Red Sea right now. Get a better feel for that environment.
Yeah. What stands out to you as the most significant part of this whole unexpected event? Something to ponder?